I just walked through my front door after 12 days on the road, my knees still aching from the red-eye flight, when I heard words that turned my blood to ice right there in the hallway. Keep her down there. We'll handle it in the morning. That was Jamal's voice. My son. Calm as Sunday morning, cold enough to make me question if I'd heard him right. I looked around for Ruby. No cheerful greeting like she always gave me. Just the faint sound of metal scraping against concrete from somewhere below my feet, like someone tapping weakly on a door they couldn't open. I moved slowly toward the storage room door, a door I'd never locked in 23 years, now fitted with a brand new digital keypad. When I pressed my hand against the wood, I heard breathing. Ragged, desperate breathing. Ruby's breathing. I punched in the emergency override code. But what stopped my heart cold wasn't finding Ruby locked inside. It was the real estate sign leaning against the wall, clearly showing tomorrow's closing date. And that was just the beginning of what my son had orchestrated behind my back. Something that could destroy not only Ruby, but everything I built in my 68 years. If you're still watching, drop a comment and tell me where you're from. Every word helps this story find the people who need to hear it. And if it touched you, hit that like button so others can find their way here too. I turned on every light in that basement and rushed down those stairs. Ruby was curled up in the corner, her favorite purple sweater covered in dust, hair matted, hands shaking like autumn leaves in a Georgia thunderstorm. When she saw me, her eyes went wide, squinting like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Preach. She called me by the nickname from our college days. Ruby only used that name when she was scared out of her mind or couldn't think straight. Let me back up. I just stepped into my own house after 12 days away at a veterans conference, legs still numb from that overnight flight, when I heard a sentence that froze me solid in my kitchen doorway. Keep her down there. We'll handle it in the morning. Jamal's voice. Smooth, cold enough to make me wonder if my ears were playing tricks. I didn't see Ruby anywhere. No warm hug like she'd given me for 42 years. Just that faint metallic sound from somewhere beneath the floor, like someone tapping weakly against a door they couldn't force open. I walked slowly toward the storage room door, something I'd never locked, let alone fitted with some fancy new electronic lock. When I pressed my palm flat against it, I heard ragged breathing. Ruby's breathing. I unlocked it using the override. But what made my stomach drop wasn't that Ruby had been locked inside. It was the wooden real estate sign propped beside the door, clearly showing tomorrow's property transfer date. And that was only the beginning of what my son had done while I was gone. Something that could destroy not only Ruby, but my entire life. I knelt beside her, placing my hand on her shoulder. It's me. It's Marcus, Ruby. She hesitated, then grabbed my arm like a drowning woman clutching a life preserver. I held her, feeling the cold radiating from skin that was always warm to the touch. I knew she hadn't been down here for just an hour or two. It had been days. I helped her up those stairs. Each step looked like a battle, like her legs had forgotten how to obey her body. In the living room, Ruby collapsed onto the couch, gasping for air. I hurried to get her water. When I came back, she was looking around, confused and disoriented. They said I was bothering you. They said I had to sign papers so you wouldn't be stressed out. I froze in place. Who told her that? What papers? Before I could ask, I noticed something wasn't right. Furniture had been moved. The wall clock that always hung near the fireplace was now beside my old upright piano. The leather chairs had been pulled apart, like someone had been measuring space for a moving truck. Several family photos were placed face down on the mantel. A few taped cardboard boxes sat near the window, the kind you use when you're packing up to move. This made no sense. My home had never been messy or rearranged like this. I'd only been gone 12 days. Ruby leaned back against the cushions, her eyes dull and lifeless. She whispered like she was afraid of her own words. They didn't let me call you. My chest tightened. They? Jamal, my son, or Kaisha, my daughter-in-law? Before I could ask anything else, the front door clicked open. Jamal and Kaisha walked in together. Kaisha froze when she saw me standing there. Oh, you're back early. Jamal stiffened for maybe 2 seconds before forcing a smile across his face. Pops, you didn't tell us you were coming today. I didn't answer right away. I just sat down next to Ruby, placing my hand firmly on her shoulder, claiming space, saying without words that she was with me, not them. Kaisha rushed over, acting perfectly frantic. She would have fooled me completely if I didn't already know the truth. Oh my God, Ruby, I thought you were taking a nap upstairs. What were you doing in the storage room? Why did you lock yourself in? I stared straight into her eyes. A flicker of fear flashed across them before disappearing completely. Jamal jumped in, voice a little too loud for the situation. She wandered off and got stuck down there. You know how she gets, Pops. No, Ruby never went into the storage room alone. She hated dark spaces ever since she was a child. I stood up and walked toward the trash can near the kitchen sink. I always tossed a banana peel in there before heading to the airport 12 days ago. But today, something else was sitting inside. A blister pack of heavy sedatives. No prescription label, no doctor's name, nothing like the medication Ruby was supposed to take. Back in the kitchen, I noticed Ruby's Alzheimer's medication was completely gone. Where's her medicine? I asked. Jamal waved a hand dismissively. I switched her to something better. Her doctor signed off on it. Jamal had never met Ruby's doctor without me being present. And Ruby's neurologist would never approve heavy sedatives without consulting me first. He was lying straight to my face. Ruby tugged at my sleeve gently. They gave me something so bitter. Then I slept and slept and slept. My throat tightened with anger. Kaisha cut in sharply, her voice like a blade. She's confused, Marcus. Don't believe random things she says when she's like this. I didn't answer. I just stayed beside Ruby, keeping my hand protective on her shoulder. Ruby's eyes shifted away nervously whenever Jamal moved closer, like she was afraid of her own son. When Jamal walked toward the kitchen, I noticed a set of new keys hanging on the wall rack. The storage room key was there, shiny and brand new, nothing like the one I'd always used. Why the electronic lock? I asked calmly. We've never locked that door in 23 years. Kaisha gave a sweet laugh that hit my ears like broken glass. She keeps wandering down there. We didn't want her falling down those stairs and getting hurt. Another lie. That staircase had double handrails, non-slip treads, and motion sensor lighting I'd installed myself. I sat down beside Ruby, brushing the back of her cold hand gently. The same hand I'd held every evening while we watched the news together for 4 decades. How long were you down there, Ruby? I whispered. Ruby looked down at her lap. Her voice trembled. I don't remember exactly, but I was scared the whole time. Then she leaned toward me and whispered, fearful someone else might overhear. They told me to sign something so you wouldn't have to worry about things. But I didn't understand what it was. A cold shiver crept up my spine like ice water. Sign what? Who pressured her and why? Jamal returned to the room, clapping his hands lightly like he was trying to lighten the mood. Pops, you should get some rest. We'll talk about selling the house later this week. The new place will make everything easier for taking care of Mom. Selling the house? My house? Tomorrow? I glanced again at that wooden real estate sign near the storage room door. Transfer date tomorrow, 3 p.m. My heart sank like a stone. I looked at Jamal and Kaisha carefully. Then I pretended to sigh to be tired, to give in to the situation. All right, we'll figure it out tomorrow when I'm rested. Kaisha smiled faintly with relief. Jamal's shoulders visibly relaxed. They believed I'd softened and accepted their plan, but when they turned away, I looked at Ruby. The fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't just been neglected or forgotten. She had been locked away, controlled, manipulated like a prisoner. And the people who did it were my own son and daughter-in-law. I squeezed Ruby's hand gently, whispering so only she could hear. Don't worry. I'll find out exactly what they've done. That night, I lay in bed without sleeping a single minute. Every sound made me open my eyes wide. Every step Jamal took down the hallway made me tense up. From this moment forward, I wasn't just a husband protecting his wife anymore. I was a father forced to fight against his own child. And this story was only beginning to unfold. The next morning, I woke before dawn broke. Ruby was asleep in the armchair by the window, her breathing thin and fragile like paper. I tucked a light blanket over her carefully and walked quietly to my office. I hadn't slept at all, and Ruby's trembling whisper kept echoing in my mind. They made me sign so you wouldn't worry. The office door was cracked open slightly, like someone had just been inside moments ago. I turned on the light and went straight to the safe hidden under the filing cabinet. For 30 years, only Ruby and I knew that combination. I opened it, and my heart dropped straight through the floor. The folder with the house deed was gone. The life insurance paperwork gone. The retirement account documents gone. Only old tax returns and an ancient construction notebook remained inside. I sat down hard, gripping the chair so tight my knuckles turned white. Ruby couldn't have taken them. She could barely remember what day it was. Jamal. He knew where the safe was located. I had never imagined in my worst nightmares that he would open it without permission. Trying not to panic completely, I turned on my computer and checked our bank accounts. An error message popped up immediately. I called the support line and waited. The representative spoke gently and carefully. Mr. Thompson, we're holding a large transaction from your wife's linked account. It appears she initiated an unusual transfer request. Ruby couldn't use a computer anymore. Her smartphone had been taken away months ago. How could she possibly transfer money? How much are we talking about? I asked. A substantial withdrawal from your joint savings account. We're pausing it to verify with the authorized party. Authorized party? Yes, sir? The legal power of attorney listed under Jamal Thompson. My grip tightened on the phone until my joints cracked audibly. I had never signed any power of attorney paperwork in my life. And Ruby, she wasn't capable of understanding anything complex right now with her condition. My eyes blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Can you send me a copy of that document? Of course, Mr. Thompson. And just to confirm, your family never filed for this authorization through your branch? I swallowed hard past the lump in my throat. Never. And my wife is not mentally competent to sign anything legal right now. A pause on the other end. Sir, you need to notify your primary bank and the authorities immediately. This appears fraudulent. I hung up, hands still shaking like leaves. I walked into the living room and looked at the security camera mounted on the wall. The signal light was completely off. I climbed a chair and checked behind it. The hard drive had been physically pulled out and removed. Jamal was the only person who knew the breaker panel security code. The house felt unnervingly quiet, the grandfather clock ticking loud in the silence, like it was marking all the time I'd been gone. Enough time for everything to unfold behind my back without me knowing. Ruby was awake now, staring blankly at the wall. Marcus, the other day they took me somewhere with a blue sign out front. A man gave me papers and said sign these to protect our house. I can't remember much else. She pressed her fingers hard to her temples, trying desperately to reach a memory slipping away like water. "Do you remember who took you there?" I asked as gently as possible. "Jamal and Kaisha came along too. They said you were tired from traveling, so I had to help with the paperwork." I inhaled deeply, trying to stay calm. Ruby didn't know she'd been used as a pawn. Upstairs, I searched Jamal's old bedroom and quickly found a photocopy of the power of attorney document. I opened it and stared at the signature. Shaky, uneven, slanted at a strange angle, like someone who wasn't fully aware of what they were signing. This wasn't Ruby's handwriting. I'd known her script for more than 40 years. A knock behind me made me turn. Jamal stood in the doorway. "What are you doing in here, Pops?" I hid the photocopy under other documents quickly. Had a question about the savings account activity. He avoided my eyes completely. Mom agreed to everything. "I'm just helping manage things so you can rest. You need to take it easy." "Agreed?" I repeated quietly, testing him. "Yeah, I'm just helping out the family." His lie came out smooth and practiced. Too smooth. All morning I asked small casual questions, testing him carefully. Jamal tried to act calm and normal, but his shoulders stayed tense. His hands shoved too deep into his pockets, like he was hiding something. After lunch, I called the bank again from my car. They confirmed Jamal had submitted the power of attorney document 3 days earlier, right after I'd left for the conference. "Everything appears valid with your wife's signature," they said professionally. I hung up slowly, letting reality sink in. 12 days. Just 12 days away from home. And they'd built an entire elaborate plan. Open the safe, steal documents, drag Ruby somewhere to sign authority papers, move money around, and prepare to sell the house right out from under me. Ruby sat in the kitchen later, cutting an apple slowly, trying her best to act normal, and I realized with a sinking heart that she had no idea she was at the center of an elaborate criminal scheme. Jamal came in again, softer this time, more manipulative. "Pops, you're exhausted. It's time I handle the finances and the property. You've done enough." I gave him a smile that never reached my eyes at all. "You're right, son. I'll let you help from now on." His face lit up like Christmas morning. He actually thought I had yielded and given up. But the moment he walked away satisfied, I looked at Ruby, my partner through all of life's storms and struggles. Her memory fading by the day, and I knew one thing with absolute rock-solid certainty. I had to stay sharp and alert. I had to watch Jamal's every move closely, and I could not reveal a single doubt or suspicion. When Jamal and Kaisha left later to pick up dinner supplies, I took Ruby to Dr. Harrison on Peachtree Street. I told her we were just going for some fresh air and a drive. She nodded, seeming relieved to get out of that house for a while. Dr. Harrison examined Ruby for barely 1 minute before realizing something was seriously wrong. After running tests, he pulled me aside. His expression was grave. "Marcus, she's clearly malnourished, moderately dehydrated, and showing signs of prolonged psychological stress. Have you changed her diet or her medication recently?" I shook my head firmly. "Marcus, she didn't end up like this on her own. She hasn't been properly cared for in days, maybe longer." I didn't explain the full situation yet. I wasn't ready to say those words out loud. Ruby sat nearby drawing circles on a scrap of paper with a pen, her hand trembling noticeably. When we left the clinic, I called Terrence, my oldest friend and a seasoned attorney. I told him everything that had happened. The missing documents, the strange bank transfer, the suspicious power of attorney, Ruby locked in the basement. He sighed deeply on the other end. "Marcus, this sounds like either a forged POA or someone deliberately exploiting Ruby's confusion and condition. You need to be extremely careful moving forward. If they've gotten one signature from her, they'll try for more. That sealed my decision completely. I needed to pretend I knew nothing at all. If I confronted Jamal directly right now, he would speed everything up and finish whatever plan he had. But if I acted weak and tired and cooperative, they would slip up eventually. When we got back home, I smiled at Jamal like nothing unusual had happened at all. You were right earlier, son. Finances really do wear me out these days. His eyes brightened noticeably, like a child being rewarded with candy. He thought he'd won me over completely. That evening, we had dinner together at the long dining table. Ruby barely ate anything, her movements slow and uncertain. I served food onto her plate, while Kaisha whispered to Jamal across from us. Her voice was soft enough that she must have thought I couldn't hear anything, but the dining room was so quiet with the overhead lights dimmed, making every sound drift closer than normal. Only 48 hours left to go. If we finish the closing early, we can move everything by Monday morning. I pretended to clear my throat to cover my sharp intake of breath. Jamal glanced at me suspiciously, trying to gauge whether I'd heard anything, then forced a thin smile across his face and raised his voice artificially. Pops, tomorrow I'll take you to see that new senior apartment complex. Clean, safe, modern. You won't have to worry about a single thing anymore. I nodded slowly, acting tired and defeated, pressing my hand to my forehead like a man who truly needed his son to take over everything. Sounds good, son. But that night, after they went upstairs to their room, I planted a mini voice recorder under the fruit basket in the kitchen. Jamal and Kaisha's voices kept drifting down from the second floor throughout the night, and I didn't want to miss a single word they said. Ruby stepped out of the bedroom around midnight, hugging her cardigan close like she was freezing cold. She looked around nervously and whispered to me, her voice tight like she was holding back tears. Jamal took my phone away. They said I bother you too much when I call. I don't want to bother you, Marcus. I put my arm around her protectively. You never bother me. Not ever in 42 years. She leaned into me heavily, like she would collapse completely if I let go. Around 1 in the morning, I heard Jamal talking on his phone downstairs. He thought I was asleep because I had purposely turned on a faint, fake snoring sound app from my bedroom. Tomorrow night, exactly 8 o'clock. I want everything done fast and clean. He's getting softer by the hour. If he won't sign willingly, we'll do it another way. Another way? Those words echoed in my head like a warning bell. I stood behind my bedroom door, my back pressed hard against the wall, afraid to even breathe too loud. Ever since Ruba was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 2 years ago, I always thought the worst thing that could happen was the disease progressing quickly and taking her mind. But now, something far worse was coming from my own flesh and blood, the son I had raised for nearly 40 years. The next morning, Jamal brought a real estate agent to tour the house without even asking me first. When I walked down the stairs, Jamal quickly blocked my path. Pops, you're tired. Let me handle this meeting. Just rest. I gave a thin smile, rubbing my temples like everything felt like a burden. Go ahead, son. The agent walked through the living room professionally, taking notes on a clipboard. Completely unaware that this house was the place where Ruby and I once stayed up late decorating for Christmas, when Jamal was just a tiny boy learning to walk. Yet now, it was being treated like an item ready to be sold off quickly for cash. That hurt worse than any physical punch could. That night, I lay beside Ruby in bed, listening to her murmur in her sleep, drifting in and out of moments of clarity and confusion. She gripped my hand weakly, but tighter than I expected given her condition. Don't let them take me anywhere, Marcus. I squeezed her hand gently and firmly. I'm right here. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. I promise you that. In the darkness, I heard Jamal's footsteps moving slowly along the upstairs hallway. the faint clink of a spoon against a coffee cup from downstairs, and Kaisha's voice, quietly saying something I could barely make out. The longer we wait, the bigger the risk becomes. He's not as clueless as you think he is. Jamal chuckled darkly. If he doesn't sign tomorrow afternoon, I have a way to make him sign whether he wants to or not. That sentence sent a cold jolt through my entire body like electricity. I understood clearly then that they didn't just want money or property. They were willing to go further, past every moral boundary imaginable, to finish their plan no matter what. And because of that realization, I couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. From that moment forward, I knew with certainty I had to step into a battle I never imagined I'd fight. A battle against my own son. The next morning, I waited until Jamal brought Ruby downstairs to the kitchen, then used the excuse of looking for scissors to slip upstairs. I knew time was running out fast. Those 48 hours Kaisha mentioned kept echoing in my head like a countdown timer ticking toward zero. Kaisha's designer handbag sat beside her vanity mirror. I unzipped it quietly, not to invade privacy, but because I was trying to save my wife from a trap my own son had constructed. I searched every compartment. Lipstick, compact mirror, car keys, random receipts, and a stiff yellow envelope. The moment I touched it, ice spread across my back. Inside was a loan contract for $200,000. Borrower listed, Marcus J. Thompson. Signature, Marcus Thompson. I stared at that handwriting for a long time, studying every stroke. Some parts looked frighteningly similar to mine. They must have practiced copying my signature, but they didn't know that every time I signed my name, I slanted the final stroke downward slightly. On this forgery, the stroke was perfectly straight and clean, too neat to be natural. I stayed calm, or tried to. My hands trembled, but I put everything back exactly where it was. I needed to keep playing the role of the tired old man, so Jamal wouldn't suspect anything. As I left the bedroom, I noticed Kaisha's laptop was still open on the desk, screen glowing faintly. I stepped closer carefully. A string of emails appeared, sent by someone named Carlton Hayes. I knew that name from somewhere dark. Carlton was connected to a Ponzi scheme that made local news 3 years back. I'd seen his photo in the Atlanta Journal, slicked back hair, smile that looked carved into people's trust. The kind of man who preyed on families with money and chaos, trying to lure them into fake investments. In the emails, Kaisha kept asking repeatedly, "When can we move the money?" Marcus is starting to relax his guard. We'll sell the house fast. We priced it low, exactly like you instructed. Priced it low. I opened the attached file slowly. An appraisal of my house, valued nearly 40% below market rate. Cheap enough to sell immediately, easy enough to cash out quickly, convenient enough to hide anything suspicious from authorities. I stood frozen for a long moment. This house, the place where Ruby and I had lived since Jamal was a boy, running circles in the backyard, was being valued like clearance merchandise at a going-out-of-business sale, all to serve a scheme without conscience or humanity. I went downstairs feeling like I carried stones in my chest. Ruby was drinking tea, her eyes dull, like she was trying desperately to hold on to a fading memory. I sat beside her and asked gently, "Ruby, do you remember who gave you the medicine that made you sleep?" She frowned deeply, then whispered, "They said it was new medicine from your doctor. I took it because they said so. I kept sleeping. Couldn't wake up for anything. I was so scared, Marcus." I saw a small bruise on her wrist, probably from being held down when she panicked and resisted. My heart clenched painfully. I checked the trash bin behind the kitchen counter. Under the plastic bag was an empty white pill container. No prescription label, no doctor's name, no manufacturer information visible. I stared at it hard. This wasn't Alzheimer's medication. It wasn't anything she had ever taken before. Something much stronger, strong enough to keep her knocked unconscious for days, too drained to resist anything, and most importantly, unable to call me for help. Suddenly, Jamal's voice sounded directly behind me. "Pops, what are you looking for back there?" I turned, keeping my face completely neutral. "Looking for the container lid. The fruit bowl fell yesterday and rolled back here." Jamal looked at me longer than usual, his eyes probing mine like he was trying to read every single thought in my head. "You're recovering fast from your trip." I gave a weak smile. "That new medicine you mentioned must be helping her and me both." He didn't fully believe it, but he let it go for now. That afternoon, I called the bank and requested to temporarily freeze all transactions until I could personally verify them myself. I knew I was only buying precious time. They might have already taken substantial amounts, and they had. When I checked the secondary savings account online, $40,000 had been withdrawn just 3 days earlier. I didn't even feel shock anymore, just an empty, spreading ache throughout my entire body. I leaned heavily against the kitchen cabinet and watched Ruby trace the flowers on the tablecloth like a confused child. She didn't know what $40,000 meant anymore. Didn't know the house was about to be sold. Didn't know Jamal was deceiving his own parents systematically. Didn't know our life was being torn apart piece by piece. Then I heard Jamal in the living room, speaking quietly on his phone, just loud enough for me to barely catch fragments. "He's old and tired. Easy to manipulate. If he won't sign willingly, we still have another option available to us." I closed my eyes tightly. The pulse in my temple pounded like a drum, but my voice stayed calm when I responded. The outward calm I had forced myself to maintain through these terrible days. I understood clearly what was coming would not be gentle or kind. And my family, the family I once believed was unbreakable, was standing on the edge of a storm. Only I could stop, even if it meant facing my own son in battle. If you're still listening, and you feel that same ache when a father discovers his own signature was forged to steal everything he built over decades, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Or share even the smallest thought, so I know we're walking this dark path together. Since the night I found Kaisha's emails and the forged loan contract hidden in her bag, Ruby had begun having terrible nightmares. Anytime she heard a door lock click, she jolted awake violently, eyes wide like she'd just escaped from somewhere dark and cold. One night, she grabbed my shirt collar desperately, her voice shaking uncontrollably. "Don't let them take me down there again, Marcus. Don't leave me alone with them." I held her shoulders firmly, soothing her with the softest voice I could manage. But every single time, a lock clicked anywhere in the house. Even if it was just Kaisha closing the refrigerator or Jamal locking the garage door, Ruby curled up like a wounded bird, searching desperately for the smallest hiding place. Kaisha's irritation grew more obvious with each passing day. Whenever Ruby's trembling hands dropped a spoon, or she stepped slowly out of the room confused, Kaisha muttered under her breath, "She's exaggerating everything. I don't see anything actually wrong with her." Once she even looked me straight in the eye and said, half smiling coldly, "Ruby's trying to get attention, Marcus. Don't indulge it, or she'd get worse." I stared at her long enough that she finally looked away uncomfortable. I knew Ruby wasn't pretending anything. She was living in real fear inside the home she had loved her whole life. Around noon one day, Jamal walked in with a sharply dressed man carrying a leather briefcase. "Pops, this is Stephen. He's going to help us explore a few better living options for your future." Without any further explanation, I knew Stephen was a real estate agent. His handshake was quick and firm, the kind used by people always rushing to close deals fast. I kept my tone perfectly calm. "What options are we talking about, son?" Jamal slung an overly friendly arm around Stephen casually. Don't worry about details. I just want you and Mom somewhere quieter and safer. This house is too big and requires too much maintenance for your age." I looked around at every corner carefully. Every single space held a precious memory. The wooden cabinet I built by hand the year we moved in. The floral curtains Ruby chose on a special trip to Savannah. The crayon marks Jamal made on the hallway wall at 6 years old that I couldn't bear to fully erase. Now they were suddenly too big and too troublesome for me to handle. While Stephen flipped through his professional notebook, he said casually, "Your son mentioned you've started forgetting important things recently. A safer place with supervision might be better for everyone." I froze completely. Jamal had told people that I, the man who built the garage himself, who remembered every single one of Ruby's medical appointments, who still prepared our taxes annually, was being described as a confused old man who couldn't manage his own life anymore. Stephen realized he'd slipped badly and looked down quickly at his notes. But that sentence lingered in my chest like a cold needle piercing skin. Suddenly, I understood the full picture clearly. Jamal didn't just want money and property. He wanted to strip me of my legal capacity entirely. Once I was officially labeled forgetful and incompetent, he could sign everything for me, decide everything for me, control everything completely. That night, after they went upstairs to bed, I gathered every single piece of evidence carefully. The forged loan contract, the suspicious power of attorney, emails about undervaluing the house deliberately, the audio recordings from the kitchen, a photo of the unmarked sedative container. I saved absolutely everything onto a USB drive, then hid it at the bottom of an old domino game box in the garage, somewhere Jamal would never think to look. Darkness came quicker than usual. I sat beside Ruby on the couch, combing her silver hair gently with my fingers. She turned toward me slowly, her eyes showing a blend of sadness and deep fear. "Marcus, I don't want to stay with Jamal anymore. I'm genuinely scared now. The way he looks at me, it's completely different than before." I had never heard Ruby speak of our son that way in 40 years. I held her as her thin shoulders trembled noticeably. That night, I had her sleep in my room exclusively. I locked the door from the inside securely, not because I thought Jamal would act violently immediately, but because Ruby desperately needed to feel safe somewhere. I left the nightlight on. She held my hand tightly all night long. Close to midnight, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps outside in the hallway. Jamal. He stopped right in front of my bedroom door. Then tap, a soft knock on the wall beside the door, not knocking to enter, just checking if I was asleep. I didn't move a muscle. Ruby curled closer, and I placed my hand protectively on her back to comfort her. After a long while, Jamal walked away slowly. His steps faded down the stairs gradually, but my heart didn't settle at all. I lay perfectly still in the darkness, feeling Ruby's breath against my shoulder, and knew they were going to act very soon, almost certainly, and probably within the next 24 hours. Those 48 hours Jamal and Kaija mentioned earlier were slipping away rapidly. This house, the place where I once felt safest in the entire world, had become a silent battleground where every breath carried tension. And the first, a man who had lived through more than 68 winters, would have to be sharper than ever in my entire life. For Ruby's safety and for my dignity as both a husband and a father, everything depended on my next moves. That morning, before the sun had fully risen over Atlanta, I heard Ruby moving around in the kitchen. I stepped out quickly, ready to greet her like always, when she turned toward me with an unfamiliar look that froze me solid in place. "Who are you exactly?" Her voice trembled like she was speaking to a complete stranger who'd walked into her home uninvited. It felt like someone dropped a stone straight into my chest cavity. "Ruby, it's me, Marcus." I reached out carefully, but she backed away frightened, clutching the dish towel like a tiny shield. Just a moment later, her eyes softened slightly, as if something familiar flickered back momentarily. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. My mind feels strange and broken." I held her trembling hand, a hand so cold it felt almost unreal to touch. In that precise moment, I realized the damage she had suffered was far deeper than I ever imagined possible. Ruby wasn't just afraid of Jamal and Kaisha anymore. She had been traumatized so severely that her memory was collapsing into completely empty spaces. Later that morning, Kaisha walked downstairs with her coffee mug, her usual cold expression firmly in place. She glanced at Ruby sitting dazed at the table, then said to me in an overly casual tone dripping with fake concern, "If Ruby keeps acting like this, it's better for her to stay upstairs with me exclusively. Much easier to take care of properly." I knew exactly what easier to take care of meant in reality. She wanted to separate Ruby from me completely, control her more easily without interference. "No," I said firmly and clearly. "Ruby stays with me always." Kaisha lifted an eyebrow challengingly. "Marcus, you're making this situation harder than it needs to be for everyone." Before I could respond properly, Jamal walked in, catching the tail end of the conversation. "Pops," he said, clear irritation flaring in his voice now. "Everything is messy enough already. Don't make it harder for us to help you both." I looked at him a long time without speaking. My son, the boy I raised carefully, taught manners, taught right from wrong, was talking to me like I was a burden and an obstacle. I only answered with a faint smile. If I lost my temper now, everything would explode prematurely. At noon, when they went out shopping together, I hurried to gather all the remaining evidence quickly. Screenshots of emails, the forged loan contract, the undervalued appraisal document, the kitchen audio recordings, the photo of the unmarked sedatives. I copied everything onto the USB drive, then called Terrence immediately. "Terrence, it's all sent to your secure email. Keep a backup copy somewhere safe. And no matter what happens to me, don't let them get near Ruby ever again." A brief silence on the other end, then his voice came back steady. "I understand completely, Marcus. Stay calm and careful. I'm here whenever you need me." Late in the afternoon, Ruby rested her head on my shoulder gently, her voice barely a whisper. "Marcus, I remember something. They left me hungry for so long. I called out for help, but no one came at all. I thought I was going to die down there alone." I placed my hand over hers protectively. "You're completely safe now. I promise you that with everything I have." Ruby couldn't remember every specific event anymore, but the sensations remained sharp as blades cutting her. Hunger, fear, cold, abandonment. Those things carved themselves deeper than any image or memory ever could. That night, when Jamal thought I was asleep, I heard his voice clearly in the living room below. "No, don't delay it any longer. Push the house paperwork up by 24 hours. I want everything done before this weekend ends." I held my breath completely. Their plan was moving even faster than I thought possible. A little before 10 that evening, I made a decision that changed everything. I had to take Ruby out of that house immediately. That very night. I didn't know what they would do if cornered, but I knew with certainty I couldn't let Ruby stay in that house for even one more night. I gently helped her put on a warm coat and whispered softly, "Ruby, we're going to stay with Jerome for a few days. Just a short visit." Jerome was an old military buddy of mine, someone I trusted completely with my life. Ruby nodded, a little confused, but not resisting at all. We went down to the garage through the back hallway, trying desperately not to make any noise. But the moment I opened the car door, the porch light snapped on brightly. Jamal stood there, arms crossed. "Pops, where exactly are you going at this hour?" His voice sounded calm, but I saw the tight line in his jaw. The air in the house feels suffocating. I said carefully, I'm taking Ruby for a short drive to clear our heads. Jamal looked at me hard, then at Ruby, his eyes darkening just for a second. Then he gave a thin smile. Do whatever you want. Just don't be gone long. I knew he realized I was trying to protect Ruby, but he forced himself to hide the irritation, probably because their plan wasn't finished yet, and they didn't want to draw attention prematurely. I drove out of the driveway slowly, keeping a steady speed, even though my hands were trembling on the wheel. Ruby pressed a hand to the window, staring into the night like a child escaping a terrible nightmare. Where are we going, Marcus? To somewhere safer, sweetheart. Somewhere they can't reach you. I brought her to Jerome's house across town, left her in his care, and briefly explained that Ruby needed a few days of protected rest. Jerome didn't ask many questions. He just put a strong hand on my shoulder. I'll take care of her like my own sister. You do what you need to do, brother. Driving back alone, the night air seeped through the window crack, cold enough to sting my chest. But my mind had never felt clearer or more focused. I knew the day of reckoning was coming fast, and I also knew this with absolute certainty. This time, I wouldn't let them lay a hand on Ruby ever again. Early the next morning, I went straight to the Atlanta Police Department. The officer on duty saw the seriousness on my face and took me directly to the supervising detective. I put the USB drive and photocopies on her desk. I'd like to file a formal report. This isn't just a family matter anymore. It's criminal. Detective Harris, mid-40s, sharp eyes but calm demeanor, sat silently for nearly 15 minutes, reading every page carefully. When she played the kitchen recording, especially the part where Jamal said he wanted to push the paperwork up by 24 hours, I saw her face tighten visibly. Mr. Thompson, she said, slow but firm. Based on what you've provided here, this may be a severe case of elder abuse along with financial fraud and forged documents. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. My wife, Ruby, she's very weak. If I hadn't taken her out last night, I honestly don't know what would have happened to her. Detective Harris wrote everything down carefully, then asked more detailed questions about Ruby's condition in recent days. Being left without food, being given unidentified sedatives, being isolated, and locked up. I told her everything, no more, no less. My voice shook at times, but I kept myself steady. I needed them to see the complete truth. As I was about to leave, Harris called after me. Mr. Thompson, one more thing. She slid a freshly printed background report across the desk. Jamal hasn't worked for the past 4 months. I stared at that line for a long time. It felt like the final knife cutting through any fragile hope that this was just a temporary moment of weakness. 4 months, which meant every time he said working late, team meeting, work stress, he'd been lying straight to my face. The detective added, we also suspect Kaisha helped with the forged signatures. A lot of the documents show a woman trying to mimic a man's handwriting. If this is part of a larger scam, we may be able to add more serious charges. I wasn't surprised at all. Someone as calculating as Kaisha wouldn't hesitate to work behind Jamal in all those dirty schemes. As I stepped toward the exit, an older man stood waiting nervously in the hallway. He looked anxious when he saw me. You're Marcus Thompson, right? I nodded carefully. He glanced around, then pulled me aside. I'm William. I think I'm also a victim of your son. William handed me a worn stack of documents, bank statements, emails from Jamal Thompson promising financial guidance. Jamal had promised him fixed monthly returns, safe investments, real estate-backed guarantees. I recognized the pattern immediately. It was the exact same Ponzi structure Jamal was involved in. I lost almost $70,000, William whispered. The police told me to bring more evidence if I had it. When I heard them mention your name, I thought I should come forward. I thanked him sincerely, not just because he brought evidence, but because his story confirmed my worst fear. Jamal wasn't only deceiving his parents. He was targeting other seniors systematically, people who trusted him, just as I once did. I went back inside and handed everything William gave me to the police. Detective Harris said, "With this new evidence, we'll request an arrest warrant within 24 to 48 hours. You did the right thing coming in, Mr. Thompson." Her words eased me slightly, but not enough to calm me. Jamal was desperate, and a desperate man can do anything. I left as dusk settled. I drove home only to pick up Ruby's remaining things. Clothes, medication, a few personal items. If the police arrested Jamal that night, good. But if not, I wanted Ruby to have everything she needed without ever returning to the house. My home sat at the end of a quiet street, the oak tree in the yard holding on to a few late winter leaves. I parked 2 houses away. I wanted to watch first, an instinct I had learned after days of suspicion. As I walked closer, my chest tightened. Jamal's car parked right in front of the house. Lights off. No one outside. No sound inside. The whole house was dark, but I could feel something waiting in that silence, an unnatural stillness unlike any night before. I swallowed hard. I wasn't afraid of the dark, but I knew that when my son was cornered, he could become someone I no longer recognized. I stood at the gate, hand on the latch, heart pounding. I sensed something terrible about to happen. I opened the gate quietly, stepping into the yard like a stranger feeling his way through his own home. The silence was so deep, I could hear the wind scraping along the eaves. But the moment I turned the key in the front door, the door was yanked open violently from inside. Jamal lunged at me. His eyes were bloodshot, hair messy, breath ragged like he'd been running. But what terrified me wasn't the chaos. It was the look of a man so desperate he no longer saw right or wrong. "Pops," his voice cracked. "You ruined everything for me." He snatched the keys from my hand, slammed the door shut hard, and shoved the keys into his pocket. I stepped back to keep distance. "Jamal, listen to me carefully." "No." He cut me off, stepping closer. "When you turned that stuff in to the police, you shoved me into prison with your own hands. I don't have any choices left now." I heard the back door close softly. Kaisha emerged from the shadows of the living room. She stood near the heater, hands trembling, but her eyes darted like someone looking for an escape, not for the truth. "Jamal," she whispered urgently, "hurry. If he doesn't sign today, they'll freeze everything." I looked at both of them, my son, and the woman I once tried to believe was only a little materialistic. And I understood something. They didn't see me as a father or anything else. To them, I was the final obstacle. Jamal pulled a stack of papers from his pocket. "Just sign this, and we're done. I'll take care of Ruby. You just need to cooperate." I didn't have to look. It was either the house transfer, the bank authorization, or a fresh power of attorney meant to erase me entirely. "I won't sign." I said it slow and clear, each word like a blade. Jamal tightened his grip on the papers, then suddenly shoved me so hard I couldn't keep my balance. My back slammed into the edge of the wooden table, pain shooting down my shoulder. I tried not to cry out, pushing myself up. Kaisha screamed, her voice sharp and shrill. "Jamal, hurry. If he doesn't sign, we lose everything." Jamal lunged and tried to force the papers into my hand. "Sign it. Sign it now." I backed toward the corner of the room. The cold floor under my feet reminded me of the phone on the counter by the kitchen. If I could reach it. I turned, trying to crawl toward the kitchen, but Jamal rushed after me and shoved me down again. My knee hit the floor hard. He stood between me and the phone, breathing heavily. You think you won already? You think sending a few emails is enough? He let out a low, unstable laugh. Kaisha pushed from behind. Evan, do it. Tonight's the last chance. At that moment, a soft click sounded from the kitchen. Jamal jerked his head toward it. I recognized the signal instantly. The recorder I placed in the kitchen, set to trigger an emergency alert to Terrence and the police whenever it detected loud noise. Seconds later, pounding on the front door echoed through the house. Police. Open the door. Jamal's face went pale. Kaisha pressed her back to the wall, covering her mouth. The second knock was harder. Then the door burst open. 2 officers entered, one shining a flashlight at us, the other signaling to stop. Jamal Thompson, you are under arrest for suspected elder abuse, financial fraud, and assaulting a family member. Jamal turned to me, rage and desperation clashing in his eyes. Pops, you'll pay for betraying me. He stepped back, but the officers were already on him, handcuffing him in seconds. Kaisha was cuffed right after when she tried to hide the papers. As Jamal was led outside, he looked back at me. The look in his eyes wasn't the son I used to know. It was a man ready to blame the whole world to hide what he'd done. I stood still, my knee throbbing, my shoulder aching, but I could breathe a long, heavy breath that loosened a weight that had sat on my chest for months. 2 weeks after Jamal and Kaisha were arrested, the case was officially transferred to the district attorney's office. The trial lasted nearly 6 weeks. Jamal's defense attorney tried to spin it as financial desperation. But Prosecutor Williams read the evidence methodically. The recordings, the forged documents, Williams' testimony about the Ponzi scheme. When the judge read the final list of charges, Jamal was found guilty on all counts. Sentencing day fell in mid-spring. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the wind outside. The judge looked at Jamal for a long moment. What you did is not only legally wrong, she said. It is a profound betrayal of the people who gave you life. Mr. Jamal Thompson, the court sentences you to 18 years in prison. Kaisha gripped the bench, tears streaming. Mrs. Kaisha Thompson, the judge continued. The court sentences you to 8 years in prison. No one clapped. I simply stood and watched Jamal being led away in handcuffs. His eyes passed over mine, empty. That evening, I went to Jerome's house to pick up Ruby. She was sitting on a chair, holding the teddy bear. I bought Jamal when he was still a child. Ruby looked up and smiled when she saw me. But she didn't ask about the trial. Alzheimer's had taken more from her than I expected. But when I tucked her blanket later that night, Ruby suddenly held my hand. Will Jamal be home for dinner? I froze. I sat beside her, placed my hand on her graying hair. No, Ruby, but we still have each other. She smiled softly, closed her eyes. After the trial, Ruby declined quickly. I moved into a small apartment near a memory care center. Every day I visited. Every day I told Ruby the story of how we met at a summer music festival in 1979. Some days she laughed. Some days she looked puzzled. When that happened, I just smiled and said, I'm the man who has loved you the longest in this life. One afternoon, Ruby was sitting by a window holding a small radio. She was playing At Last by Etta James, the song that played the first night we danced together. I stopped and just watched her. She didn't remember the song's name, might not even have remembered who I was. But she smiled, peaceful. I sat beside her, saying nothing, just placed my hand over hers. Justice doesn't heal, but it stops the hurt from happening again. Linda tilted her head with the music. I squeezed her hand gently. Ruby, I whispered, we still have each other. And sometimes that's enough. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for giving your time to the story of an old man. If you can tell me where you're watching from, I like imagining my story travels through cities. And if this story made you think, leave a comment. I'll read every word. If you'd like to hear more true life stories, hit like or subscribe. I'm grateful for every one of you who stayed until the end. Thank you for letting me finish.